Welcome to the next installment in my video lecture series for international economics. And in this particular video lecture, I'm going to be taking a look at the long-run time pass of U.S. economic variables against a permanent increase in the growth rate of the U.S. money supply. So we're going to be taking a look at how a permanent increase in the rate of the money supply impacts interest rates, the U.S. price level, and the exchange rate. Just make sure that you realize there's a couple of assumptions. One, that the graphs here, the U.S. money supply, U.S. price level, and the dollar-euro exchange rate are being measured with a natural logarithmic scale, which makes most variables that change at a constant proportional rates appear as straight lines when they are graphed against time. The slope of the line equals the variable's proportional growth rate. So just make sure you realize that. I just want to put that little disclaimer there. Also, we're making the assumption that there's a zero inflation rate in the Eurozone. So all we're talking about is the only thing that's changing here is the money supply, the rate of growth of the money supply. And so we're going to take a look at how that impacts interest rates, the price level in the United States, and the exchange rate. So let's assume that for a time period that the money supply is growing at a constant rate here, signified by pi. You could think of any number. Let's say it was growing at 3%. And then the Fed makes an announcement that's unanticipated by individuals that they're going to increase the growth rate of the money supply. So now money supply growth is going to have an additional component, and that the Fed has increased that amount. So let's say, for example, previously the money supply was growing at 3%. Now it is growing at 6%. So it's the original 3% plus the increase in the money supply that the Fed has just announced and was unanticipated by individuals in all the markets that we're discussing. So if we take a look at this, the first thing we want to take a look at is what's going to be the impact on interest rates in the United States. And the first place that we really need to take a look at, or we want to take a look at, is the impact on exchange rates. That if the money supply growth rate is going to increase permanently by an additional amount announced by the Fed, that's going to cause anticipated depreciation of the dollar in exchange rate markets. So, for example, we said there was zero inflation in the Eurozone, that the money supply was not growing. So there's going to be an increase in the supply of dollars relative to the supply of euros. So the dollar is going to be, it's going to be anticipated that the dollar will depreciate in value. So you have to realize that individuals who are in the market for securities are going to be looking at dollar-denominated securities and euro-denominated securities. So what's going to occur is if there's going to be an anticipated depreciation of the dollar because of this change in the growth rate of the money supply, that the interest rate is going to have to increase to compensate for the depreciation of the dollar. So in order to get individuals to purchase those securities, the dollar-denominated securities are going to be lower in value relative to the euro due to the fact that the money supply is increasing in the United States and the euro money supply is going to remain constant. So to counteract that increase in the money supply, the depreciation of the dollar against the euro, interest rates are going to have to increase to take into account that unanticipated change in the growth of the money supply. So the increase in the interest rate in the United States is going to take into account that change in the growth rate of the money supply. So interest rates will jump upward because of the anticipated depreciation in the exchange rate markets, because of the increase in the supply of dollars. So how is this going to impact the U.S. price level? Well, if you think about it, while this is going on previously, at T0, where the announcement is actually made by the Fed that they're going to increase the growth rate, that we were in equilibrium in the money markets, that money supply and money demand were in equilibrium. Now that we've increased the money supply and the money demand is going to increase, if you think about that. Money demand is going to decrease, Money demand is going to decrease. The reason being, as interest rates go up, the opportunity cost of holding money is going to increase. So people are not going to want to hold liquid money in order to purchase things. They're going to want to put it into interest-bearing accounts. So money demand is going to decrease. So we're going to have a disequilibrium. There's going to be an excess supply of money in the marketplace. So the only way we are going to see a return to an equilibrium in the money markets is if the money demand increases to counteract that increase of the interest rate. And what's going to occur is, if you think about it, if we have an excess supply of money, there's a lot more money chasing around the same amount of goods. That's going to put upwards pressure on prices. So prices are going to have to increase in order to account for the fact that we have an increase in the money supply that was unanticipated. So now this causes interest rates to increase by the amount of the increase in the money supply. We have a disequilibrium in the money market, and in order to return to an equilibrium position, money demand is going to increase, and money demand increases when the price level increases. So we're going to see the U.S. price level spike upward because of this unanticipated increase in the money supply, causing an increase in interest rates. And then we're going to see the time path of the inflation rate increase by the amount of the change, or the change in the growth rate of the money supply. So this upwards jump, it reflects moving back towards an equilibrium in the money markets. The fact that prices are going to move upward because we have an excess supply of money. There's additional money out there chasing the same amount of goods. And also realize that we're going to have to see an increase in aggregate in the demand for money in order for that to occur. And the increase in the demand of money is going to be reflected in that higher price level. So we have a jump when the announcement is made, and then we see the path of U.S. prices increasing faster before that, relative to the time before the Fed made the announcement. What is going to happen to exchange rate markets? We're going to see something very similar. That people are going to anticipate that they get the announcement that the money supply is going to increase at a faster rate, and they did not anticipate it. Interest rates are going to go up in the United States. This causes the price level to go up, so there's going to be a one-time bump initially at the announcement increases, that the dollar is going to depreciate very quickly. And if we assume that there's perfect information, et cetera, and the markets are working well, that there's going to be an instantaneous depreciation of the dollar when the announcement is made due to the increase in the price level. And then we're going to see a further accelerated depreciation relative to before the announcement was made. Remember, before the announcement was made, the money supply was growing at a fixed rate up until the announcement. And then after the announcement, the depreciation is going to occur. The depreciation is going to occur at a higher rate to reflect the increase in the money supply. So make sure you're comfortable with the mechanism of moving from the money supply market to the interest rate market to the price level to the exchange rate. So at time T, the Fed announces that the money supply is going to be increasing at a higher rate. And this is the change in pi, change in the growth rate of the money supply. This impacts interest rates because of the fact that when this occurs, people will anticipate a further depreciation in the dollar because of the increase in the supply of the dollar relative to the euro. And in order to maintain interest rate parity, equal interest rates comparable from the United States to the eurozone, that because of this depreciation, there has to be a spike in interest rates in order to account for the announcement that the money supply is going to increase at a much faster rate. When we go to the price level, we're going to see that there's a disequilibrium in the money markets. So there's going to be an excess supply of dollars out in the marketplace. There's an increase in supply and a decrease in demand at the existing because of the change in the money supply. So in order to return to an equilibrium, there has to be an increase in the demand for dollars, and that only occurs because of the fact that the price level is going to shoot up. So as the price level shoots up, there's an increase in the demand for money. If things are more costly, people need to hold liquid balances in order to purchase them. So we have a spike in the price level because of the announcement that's transmitted through the higher interest rate, and then is reflected in the price level of the United States. And then the path of the U.S. price level follows a new steeper path because of the fact that the money supply is growing at a faster rate. And because the U.S. price level is expected to spike because of the increase in the interest rate caused by the change in the growth rate of the money supply, we also see a spike in the depreciation. There will be a very rapid depreciation of the dollar because of the increase in the price level that is going to occur because of this transmission from the money supply to the interest rate to the U.S. price level. So we have a jump, a very serious depreciation, and then the dollar further depreciates at a much steeper level due to the fact that there's an unanticipated increase in the growth rate of the money supply.